So, I really don't get to talk about the Frontier format very much. To be fair, not being officially supported makes it a bit harder for this to gain support like Modern or Standard. But to summarize, the gist of it is that it's like the Modern format if it started in Magic 2015. Basically, this deck is designed around playing colorless cards, using cards with a mechanic like Morph and Devoid that, despite having colors, are actually colorless. Let's start with the main engine components. I guess you could call this an engine. First, we have Herald of Kozilek, a 3-cost creature that makes colorless spells cheaper. This is going to make any legitimately colorless spells, any of your Devoid cards, and playing any card with Morph or Megamorph cheaper. The last one is actually the aspect that makes this guy the most useful, since he serves as a ramp, much like our other engine component, Rattleclaw Mystic. Mystic can already tap for our colors, but can also make one of each color when he's flipped face up from Morph. The basic idea behind combining these two is that Rattleclaw Mystic's Morph ability becomes more efficient when you pay less to put him face down, and can also pay less for the spells that you cast with his instant mana. Thought Harvester is what we'll be putting at the top of our curve, because since we want to cast a lot of colorless spells, this will allow us to disrupt our opponent's draws or collected company plays, giving us a pretty decent advantage even if this isn't our win condition. To further stop our opponents, we're going to need some control cards. Let's start with some good old-fashioned counterspells, since it's surprising how good the Devoid counterspells actually are. Spell Shrivel stops early plays or overextension. Horribly Awry will stop things like Siege Rhino from ruining your day, and Void Shatter becomes an old school counterspell with an upside while we have Herald out. The downside to Void Shatter is that you can't play it strictly off of a flipped Rattleclaw, even with Herald, due to the double blue, but it's still worth your time to run. How you use this counterspell package is up to you, but basically have 4 of each between your main and sideboard at all times. What I would do is have more of a focus on the latter two in game 1. So let's talk about the cards you'll want when something actually does manage to hit the field. This is a position that we're actually quite limited in if we're staying as purely colorless as possible, since some of the more direct means have a lot of limitations. But Roast can pretty much be replaced by Processor Assault if we feel comfortable in our ability to exile our opponent's cards. Kozilek's Return functions like a Pyroclasm for us and should be used with the caution that playing a Pyroclasm with 2 toughness creatures and tails, and Spatial Contortion can be either 3 toughness removal or a buff for our own swing in, as long as we have pure colorless mana, which, as I'll get into, should be surprisingly easy for a 3-color deck. Unfortunately, the best way to deal with Saheeli combos that pop up is to just shock the Saheeli, so we'll need those in here as well. Although you could possibly get away with main boarding fewer copies if you don't think you'll run into Saheeli combo very much. So let's talk about the last maybe 5 non-lands I'd recommend for this deck. Call this the aggression, I guess? Den Protector is a Megamorph card, so we can cast him as a colorless spell, and when we flip him up, we get a card back from the graveyard, which can give us more control cards to work with, or some recovery ability from our opponents having bad stuff we can't answer. Void Grafter is our last-minute protection, stopping our opponents from targeting any of our linchpins on the board, and can be cast off of a Rattleclaw flip, whether we have Herald out or not. Smuggler's Copter lets us swing in with less risk, and also gives us control over what's in our hand. Dimensional Infiltrator can create an engine with Thought Harvester to mill out our opponents faster, thus making it harder for them to combat what we're doing, while also being an instant speed Rattleclaw target. Finally, either more lands or, I don't know, I guess an Ulamog or 2. You know, whatever you feel like is the most benefit. So about those couple of cards that require colorless mana specifically. You'd be surprised how easy it is to cast stuff like that. Shivan Reef and Yavimaya Coast both tap for colorless mana if you don't pay life. So you pay the life to play the early cards, and then when you have your colors in your other lands, just start tapping these for colorless. Blue and red are our main colors, so we definitely want more ways to produce those, and we can make green with some of the same lands, so that's good. Botanical Sanctum and Spirebluff Canal will serve as great early game lands to keep your speed up, while Sheltered Thicket fills out the cycle with something more useful in the late game for draw power and an additional target for Wooded Foothills if you really need it. Although considering you only have 12 cards at the most that legitimately need green mana in this, and one of them you can even cast without using green entirely, you may not need any basic forests at all. It seems weird to have a Frontier deck without fetch lands, but it's very possible this would be the one where that fits. So those are pretty much the basics. Stop your opponent from doing stuff, play colorless cards, and either mill them to the exile zone or beat them down with something like Smuggler's Copter. I didn't even examine the counter spells that are colored in the least, so Frontier is definitely open to a draw-go control of old, and if you want to play a Thinking Man's deck and a Thinking Man's format, then this would be the one for you. Just try not to let Emrakul give you any extra turns, okay? Those always seem to come at a price.